Welcome to Let's Chat with Julie Lewin and the Trauma Talk series, where together we'll navigate the depths of the impact trauma has on our lives and collective well-being, shining a light on resilience, healing, and the transformative power of doing the inner work. I'm your host, Julie Lewin. Thank you for joining us. Welcome back to another episode of Let's Chat with Julie Lewin. And today I have Gabrielle Bailey. And Gabrielle has a very interesting career. She was a teacher for 30 years, did amazing work with that. But in 2005, she had a crisis moment that was a buildup of stress and trauma, and she realized, I just can't do this anymore. And that set her on a new path of a spiritual adventure that has unfolded over the last 19 years. And she really wants to get into the nuts and bolts of who we are, why we do what we do, and what triggers actually guide us through that journey, and unpacking that and, you know, opening ourselves up to something that is greater than. So welcome, Gabrielle, to our
Thank
podcast.
you, Julie. It's an honour to be here.
Thank you. Journeying down in. So tell me about 2005, because I had my own personal crisis as well back in 1984 when I was told by the clairvoyant that if I kept going the way that I was, I would have a very unhappy life. I would be very ill in my 30s and 40s and die at 53. I knew the truth. That's the thing. When we know the truth of when somebody says something like that, it kind of takes our breath away a little bit. And it took my breath away. And he put his hand in the air and he said, but you have a gift of X-ray vision. And if you choose this alternate destiny, your marriage will survive, you'll remarry, you'll overcome the illnesses in your 30s and 40s, you'll have many happy moments and live into your 90s. So I'm proud to say I'm 64 and I overcame the challenge of the health challenges. It's not been an easy ride. So being on a spiritual journey and overcoming trauma is not easy, but it's empowering. Tell me about what happened for you to make you start on this journey.
Yeah, thank you. And just to even reflect on your own journey is a beautiful act of acknowledgement of how far we've come when we're in the middle of the good things, as well as when we're stuck in the middle of trauma. And I'm reminded of a teacher saying, when you're looking up, you can only see the inside of your umbrella. But when you're up and over, your umbrella is only relative to the environment it's in.
Yes.
So I'm just looking back, it was actually 25 years, not 20. Oh God, time flies. And I had been invited to a wedding in India. I'd taken my long service leave and organised my classroom and my executive role. And as Indian weddings will have it, they changed the date.
Oh.
As you do. So I never did get to that Indian wedding. However, there were benefits in this. You know, this was grace at its best, giving me this opportunity to say, are you ready yet to really look and see what's here? There's a bigger thing than your little umbrella.
Right.
And so I had my long service and all the rest of it. And I'd been married for the second time a few years earlier. I have teenage girls in high school. I'm a middle management teaching executive. Life is intense, in other words.
Yeah.
Here am I on this beautiful autumn day, right on Easter holidays, and I had a moment of time to myself with a magazine of choice, not a book of have to.
Yes.
And I'm outside having this, this is called relaxation. And I didn't get to finish my cup of coffee. I went into some kind of shaky, don't know what, sobbing overload. One might call it a nervous breakdown. I don't know what I had, but it was physically showing me something. Now, any of this other spirituality and alternative things was all totally and utterly woo-hoo stuff that
Mhm.
hippies did.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with me. I'm an academic, right?
Mhm.
Well, this was the beginning of my wake-up call, Julie. And for the next 6 to 12 months, I weaned myself with a great deal of logic and justification out of returning to work. Now, I wasn't due to retire. I'm only 50, whatever I was, early 50s.
Mhm.
And there's a whole pile more life to go. And here am I leaving I grieved. I couldn't pass the school near my door without bursting into tears for nearly 2 years. It took my bladder nearly 2 years to come into cycle of not having to pee at 11 a.m., 12:30 and 3.
Wow.
So that's the impact of being in the treadmill of life to such an extent. In my 40s, I had Epstein-Barr virus
Right.
and chronic fatigue, and that had depression. It impacted on my marriage. So when I stop and say this, yes, there's been a few traumas
Yeah, yeah,
on the way
yeah.
through. So
Yes.
what have I
So,
learned from all of that? Wow.
well, I had Epstein-Barr and I had chronic fatigue for 16 years. And that 60 and then that chronic fatigue culminated in me having 4 thyroid diseases and one of them being cancer. And then it took me another few years to recover from that. So our health has an impact on how we navigate our life. And what I did with that was I actually started creating healing templates to get me through the day. What did you do to navigate your Epstein-Barr and chronic fatigue? How
Well,
did you navigate
back
it?
in the 40s, back when I was in my 40s, I was still in my first marriage. Um, I think I divorced. I think that may have been the catalyst that said, look, I can't keep doing this the way it is. And it had an impact. I'm not sure how I dealt with that physically, apart from the medical process. I can't even remember anymore.
Do
But
you think that having the chronic fatigue, do you think that you blamed your husband for you being unwell? Just out of curiosity.
I blamed the world.
Right.
If there was a problem in my life, it was because of this or that, it was always, and this is a relation to age. I'm in my 70s, and this is very much related to mindsets and worldviews and where our whole spiritual evolution has been coming. I mean, I can look back on decades and see chunks of time of how it's
Mm,
changed and the mindset that we're living in.
mm.
So, well, it's in your genes. What if it's not, says
Yeah,
science research? And that's just one tiny example. We won't go into more on today,
right.
but I think I just got on with life.
Got on with it.
I was a stoic martyr.
Mm,
I was the giver to everyone, you know, and wearing myself out. Now,
yeah,
what were the underlying things with that was what I consequently started to learn through the different things that I learnt after I left the treadmill.
right. And is that when you started the inner work?
Absolutely.
So talk to me
I'd
about
heard
that.
about this thing called meditation back in 2000, and you couldn't, that was like saying, I go on a drinking binge after school at 3 o'clock. Teachers don't do that.
I
Here's a
know. And when I was introduced to meditation, I was 25. I was a new mum. I had 2 babies, and I was working in an accounting firm and typing tax returns. And the secretary to the partner said, "Oh, I think you should come to this meditation thing with me." And I went, "Oh, no, I don't think so."
not
She
that
said,
stuff.
"Yes, I think so." And I went, "Oh, no, weird people meditate. They take drugs and they listen to weird music, and that is not my scene." And they wear long
They
flowy
were the
dresses and
hippie peace people, weren't they? Yeah.
exactly. I was very conservative. And when I got there, she said, "No, no, it's not like that." And I believed her. And then I got there, it was exactly like that. And there was someone sitting on a little stage playing the sitar. I'd never heard that before, and and the harmonium
Mm.
and the incense. Like, this was like another world to me. And she said, "Get in there," like I was a chicken. She was shooing into the room. She said, "See that pillow there? You sit on that." So I went in and I sat on it, and she said, "Just do what they say to do." And so I did. And the music, like, it went right through me. I could feel all of it. And then at the end, she said, "So what happened? What did you think?" And she was kind of like a very extroverted person, and I was very quiet. And I said, "Oh, well, yes, I felt like my body dissolved, and I became one with the room, and it was the weirdest thing." She said, "Really?" She said, "You experienced that?" I said, "Doesn't everybody?" She said, No." And then she said, "Are you coming back?" I said, "No, it's too weird." And she said, "Oh, okay. All right. But I think you should meditate. And I think that you should sit on the same cushion in the same spot at the same time of the day and meditate for 15 minutes." And I went, "Oh, okay." So I did. That
And
was
you were
it.
25.
I was 25. That
What a
was in
gift. What a gift
1986.
that came in. I love serendipity and how the universe gives us symbols if we are aware and awake to it. So
Yeah.
that was mine. Can I share briefly
Yeah,
my
share
first?
yours. I want to know.
Well, across the road from me was a beautiful old nursing home, and behind that, an exquisite home which I'd have loved to have bought. The Brahma Kumaris had a space there.
Yep.
And I thought, oh, well, they're those, I don't know, what are they? Are they those people that bang tambourines and are dressed in orange? I don't know. But I knew that they did a meditation thing. And as it turned out, because of the values consulting work I had done, I'd met a fellow from the local hospital here in HR and we were doing workshops together. And he says, "Why don't you come across to our meditation and meet everyone?" And I'm thinking, meditation, oh God, I suppose I'd better go and do the right thing. Hear
Mm-hmm.
my people pleasing, which we know now. So I toddle over, take your shoes off. There's a few things in the hallway. I'm looking at the real estate more than anything else.
Bless
I
you.
go into this room and there's this big poster on the wall with a dot of light in the middle of it radiating out orange. There was not a word spoken.
Uh-huh.
Went in, you sat down and you stared at the dot.
Yep.
There was a brief thank you for coming and enjoy the silence.
So what happened?
My mind had space to go on a world tour of thinking and thoughts and criticisms, and it just went into overdrive. I'm supposed to be still. I'm supposed to be quiet. How can I still this mind? Listen to my mind. Look at that lady. Oh, I like her shawl. Oh, I wonder how much this place is worth. I had no way of turning off this physical thing that had been so programmed. When I look at it, it's like I was constantly in almost fight or flight.
Yeah,
Because
that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
That's what
when I
that
think
sounds
about
like.
it,
Yeah.
fight or flight mode or freeze. When I had trauma, I would freeze. I'd say nothing because of the belief systems of good girls say nothing, children should be seen and not heard, etc.
Correct. And
Embedded so deeply.
and I have a perception on that. And when you freeze, people take that as acceptance and yes. Did you find that?
I have found that what looks like keeping yourself safe is not necessarily that, but in the scheme of things, it may be the lesser of two evils. If you're related to inflicted traumas. I
Right.
don't want to go into more detail
No.
on that at the moment, of course.
Yeah.
So flight, fright, or freeze, is our reptilian brain. It is our natural instinct in that situation. And anyway, but here was my mind. Now, I think not be, and it still doesn't to this day, but I don't judge it and criticize it anymore because of the work I've done. I appreciate this thing called my neck top computer.
Okay, so talk to me about you appreciate your mind, your brain, but when you sit now in stillness and quiet, is it as like
Oh, goodness, no. It's like not going over the Sydney Harbour Bridge, 6 lanes in both directions. I'm just a car on a country road.
right? So talk to me about what was the journey of getting from 6 lanes over Sydney Harbour Bridge to one car on a country lane. How did you do the inner work to get there?
Consistency, more awareness, more acceptance, continually realigning, but I think mostly taking out the judgment,
Mhm.
self-judgment, the self-criticism, the reinforcement of never good enough, can't do this, not able to, etc. And one of the things that was actually reminded me about in this book that I had been co-authoring in
Mm.
was because I was academic, I went looking for answers in research and in the head. Now,
Right.
like your friend, she is not a mind type at a guess. She is more a heart type or maybe a body type.
Right.
When you look at the way the personality is devised and how it meets its needs of fear and flight and fight and all of those things,
Mm.
then you start to recognize that you are a mind type. So what are your core fears? And if you're a body type, what are your core fears? And
Right.
if you're a love or a heart type, what are your core fears? How do you deal with them? You know? So you may have come across people that are saying, oh, I'm in bliss. It is so wonderful. I can meditate and all the rest of it. And if you were to do any kinesiology or energy muscle testing like I do, they're not grounded. They're not in their body. They're up there somewhere. That is not what our soul's job is. We are here with this thing called a physical vehicle. My belief at this point in time, and this is miles removed from where I was, even go back 5, 7 years ago, I was still yes, but maybe. So core things like deep, deep trust is something that you have to build upon and you have to surrender into time and time again because
Yeah.
it's part of our journey.
Yeah.
So I was able through academia and various things, particularly through the first teacher, spiritual all-round teacher I had, Brandon Bays with the journey.
Right.
Very comprehensive all-round thing. So Enneagram as a marketing tool or a HR development workshop tool, and a lot of NLP is already embedded in the simple journey process. And I could go back to that 20 years. Oh, when did I start in that? I started that in 2004.
So it's 20 years ago.
Yeah. So that I can still go back to it and it's as good as it ever was. How you do it nowadays, it's a bit like driving a car. There's a hell of a lot of stuff that's just automatic. You don't think about it.
That's exactly right. So
So for
in the
me, it
beginning,
helped me to love and appreciate myself. It taught me to dive into, see, with the journey, there are two pathways, the physical and the emotional. And I used to think, well, what comes first, thoughts or emotions? A bit of a chicken and an egg thing.
so what
And
does
I
decision
realized that
did you
with
make?
this, if you go on the emotional pathway, the teaching is to do nothing with that emotion, to sit in it. I have seen Kevin do rage, watch rage build in him, even more physically, and demonstrate that an emotion, when it's fully experienced, will take maybe 10 seconds to pass through. Just like the deer in the headlight, just like a little kid, they don't stay in it. And this is one of the things that you learn how to do and you practice and do it years and years later. it gets less what you have to do, because we don't all of a sudden stop being a human and be all of a sudden all soul or all higher self,
It's actually the practice that's the key.
Consistency,
Yeah.
diligence, and I was reading something yesterday about the competence thing, when you don't know what you don't know. You're totally unaware.
Yeah.
Right? And then you become aware of, oh, I shouldn't have said this. Oh my God, I did that. And then what happens? Oh, whatever you've been conditioned to through your parenting, through your culture, through your value system, all impacts on what those things are that are going through there that stirs up the emotions, and then you've got a double mess of washing machines to work with.
So that's it. That's interesting that you say that it stirs up the emotions. What I've discovered on my journey is that sometimes we're feeling emotions that actually don't belong to us. And so I remember after running one of my retreats and taking one of the people to the airport, she said, I've got to now go home from this magnificent experience back to my home and all the stress and trauma that's going on there. And I don't even know if I want to be with my husband because he really triggers me. And I said, okay, if it doesn't belong to you, just say, I bless you, I release you, and return to sender. And we had a 6-day retreat with lots of experiences. She messaged me afterwards. She said, my highlight from the retreat was on the way to the airport at the end, and you saying, I bless you, I release you, and return to sender. She said, that has been the most extraordinary thing for me. So what do you do how do you identify if an emotion actually belongs to you?
Well, first of all, I would say my emotions belong to me and everyone else's emotions belong to them. It's not about who owns the emotions. It's what gets triggered that shows up in an emotional response, in a mental response, in a physical response, and for what it's worth on the metaphysical level, etherically. And that's where raising that awareness, as I was saying, if you're not aware of things, or you're going to be constantly getting more and more awareness. We know that. It's like climbing a mountain. You can go straight up. It's hard work. And so what? You've arrived at the top. Most of us go round and round the mountain. We'll keep passing that same landfall. All the way through, the landfall being the thing that we've got to work on. In astrology, it could be a Chiron healer thing, whatever. But what I found is that whatever is happening in my life is for me to learn and grow, whether I like it or I don't, because that's what the soul chose. How is the soul part, the higher self, able to learn unless it has this human thing and physical vehicle to operate with and to learn and grow? So my family have been the biggest gift and the biggest pain in my life. And I'm starting to think that that's because at soul level, we make agreements before we come in, that it may be, okay, all this hype about, oh, you're my soulmate, or you're my twin flame and all of this. On one level, you're only understanding it like kids in the sandpit. Then there's university level, which I'm certainly not at. But I'm aware that there's a lot more than this initial thing. For example, if I made an agreement with someone and they show up in my life at various times and we call them, oh, you're my soulmate or something like that, you can have lots of soulmates and lots of agreements, but they're there to serve a purpose that we usually don't know about, but we can access at various times depending on how aware you are. So for me, for example, I think, I was just thinking of a couple of people, but it's like this person who drives me nuts. It's this, it's that, it's this, And then I think, so what's the benefit in this? What is this teaching me? Get outside of my own little drama, victim, martyr, whatever umbrella view of the world, or protection or cover or restriction, and step outside of that and say, so what on earth is this thing here to teach me? And your head will give you answers, but that's not the best part. You need to go to the heart and feel into, what's this really about? And when I actually did that, that's a reason I'm still married to my current husband, because I pulled myself up at some point and was able to come back into my heart and say, I'm ready to leave you, says the ego. What does the heart say? Unfinished business. You're here to learn. And it's like we're dealing with ourselves like little kids. Stay at the table. Your veggies are good for you kind of mindset. Maybe not that bad, but you're on the last leg of your university degree and you think, I'm over this. I'm going to give in. I can't keep going. And somewhere in there, who or what helps you to come to terms with keep on keeping on, it's okay. And that's where thought forms and belief work and inner child work really made the difference for me. That I'm looking after my emotional self, which is pretty much, I didn't know about inner child until maybe only 10 years ago. What was this? And I still don't know what it's about really. But,
no, well,
but I'm able to use it now. So, to me, it's about listening to your body and honoring it and getting to a place where you're so unattached to, I've got to listen to my body. What's my body telling me? It's like, show me, body, what's here right now? Well, yeah, there's a bit of this, a bit of that. The body is storing the information if we're able to follow it. And that's where people like Annette Noontil and Louise Hay and those books in the 80s and 90s were the beginning of teaching us to listen to our body. Then we've got people like Bruce Lipton and Biology of Belief, where it's showing that, and the same thing with the journey, that what the journey really does is access the traumas that are stored in your cellular memory. And you do that either the physical or the emotional pathway. And when you open into that, you're able to go back in time, in a no-time space, deal with the trauma at that point and help that emotional self or inner child or even inner adult to be able to deal with the emotional. So it's an ongoing thing of mastering your own emotions and having to undo so much conditioning. So that to me is like your trip to the airport. It's like, well, whose voice is this woman hearing, in her head when she's trying to make sense of her emotions? Or not just her, just bringing it back to your journey to the airport. And it's like, yes, you cut, you release, you send them love. But what is it you're actually doing is not your emotions. You're actually doing that with the energy. You may be doing it with the entity of the relationship.
Yeah. See, I'm not sure that I'm on that same page as you, because sometimes, like, I believe that telepathy is powerful. I believe that people's thoughts are transmitted and that we receive other people's thoughts and we transmit thoughts and and other people receive our thoughts, and that's how telepathy works. If somebody's thinking thoughts about us, we can feel those thoughts and think that that's our emotion.
We can do that, I agree.
But I don't.
But it's, what is it underpins all of that is energy.
That's right. And so
that's what we're cutting. That's what we're doing. And in the process, we are setting ourselves free. And then we feel better about that. I agree. Both sides.
So that's what I mean by I bless you, I release you, and return to sender. And if that feeling, that emotion immediately ends, then you know that it's not for you to deep dive and investigate. But if it still is there, then that's when I do I need to explore this. I need to unpack this. What is it about this? And I think that what's happening in the world today, and correct me if you think this is not true, is that people are now owning every emotion they feel as their own, and it's overwhelming. And I think that that's where the overwhelm, the anxiety, the panic attacks, because everyone's more aware of the frequency, and our thoughts are, it's like
we're all in an astral field soup and we're blobbing it.
We
and that's
are.
where discernment comes in. Can I
That's
share
it.
an energy thing on telepathy or
Yes.
that kind of thing? Once upon a time, there were two sisters. One lived in Western Australia and one lived in Eastern Australia. The one in Eastern Australia was at a journey intensive weekend, and I don't want to go on about the journey. It's just happened to be the first thing that I ever did, but it's so comprehensive. Anyway, so we're at the journey weekend, and she'd had an angst of, I'm never talking to you. There had been a real break in the family, 25 years of not talking to my sister in Perth story. She does the emotional journey process. She goes through where we welcome all emotions, we feel whatever. We give resources to the inner child. We then replay what goes on, and you come out, well, what are the lessons and the guidance from your higher self, having looked at the whole thing, and then you can future integrate it. She did that, went home, and after dinner, the phone rings. Her sister from Western Australia. She said, I don't know what's been going on all day. You've been on my mind all day. Look, isn't it time that we just put an end to this feud that's been going on? It was all created by somebody else in the family and they're long gone. And here we are still stuck in the old stuff. And when the sister shared with her what was happening, it was like this overwhelming. She came back the next morning and shared that the whole room was nearly in tears, because this is the power that when we do the work on us, that energy has a ripple effect out.
Absolutely.
It changes the thought form. So one of the things that gets me watching the dilemma of the world at the moment is I can buy into that, or I can say, there, for the love of God, go I. All of this must have a bigger plan. This is bigger than me. I can just stay in love and hold the vibration of love and be the light in the world. The darkness and the lightness are part of being in 26,000 years of the Piscean age of duality consciousness. Everything is black and white, contrast and whatnot. And I just liken it on a seesaw. When we're out of balance, we're stuck in the beliefs, the thoughts, the emotions, the physical body gets sick, our relationships go to crap, everything goes wrong until we come back further towards the light or into the balance in the middle. If you do the Buddhist thing, it's coming back into balance, because the other extreme of too much light is that you're not here on purpose, being yourself, in service for whatever your soul's job was to be here. And that will oscillate backwards and forwards around through. But man, there's a lot we talk about, isn't there?
There is.
What's your take on that, Julie?
So I think that it reminds me of, like, my belief is that nature informs us, and that we can look out into the universe, and it's extraordinary with all the galaxies and the planets and the stars and all of that. And I remember the first time I saw a photo of the universe and a photo of the World Wide Web and a photo of a neuron in the brain that all look the same.
I know.
So I then was taken by the ad of the biscuit, where there were dancing salsa dancers on the
hundreds
biscuit.
And thousands or something, weren't they?
That's right. And then they zoom back out and it's just the green and red flecks on the biscuit. So basically, I think that we are a fractal of the universe, and that the universe is in us as we are, because if you know what a fractal is, it's just a repetition but getting smaller and smaller, or more magnified and more
Do
magnified.
you remember those ones? They'd zoom right in to that 0 point and then they'd keep zooming down in
Yeah.
until, yeah, I totally agree.
It's so that's how I see the world. And I also believe that there is divine order.
Yeah.
And that everything is in divine order because we see it. Like it's in nature. The divine order is in nature. So why would there not be divine order in our lives?
Yeah.
And so it's about being able to realign to the divine order. And we are a world unto ourselves. We are a world, and our world is a planet, and we have other planets in our world that all co-revolve and exist. But if you're looking at the Milky Way, they say we have 9 planets or 8. I don't know what we're going to do about Pluto. And we revolve around this sun, but there's all these other stars and galaxies. If you want to say they're all other human beings on this planet or in the circle that we interact in, it doesn't mean that we I don't know. I just think that we all have to do the inner work. And yes, doing the inner work, it changes our frequency, and therefore it changes the way the outer world responds to us. And so if we want our outer world to change, we need to do the inner work and stop blaming the outer world for what's going on in our outer world.
Yeah.
We can make the changes on the in our inner world. And the thing is that nobody else can really truly know what's going on in our inner world. Only we know. Only we know what the thoughts are. Only we know what our triggers are. Only we know what our reactivity is. And so that's where self-responsibility comes, and that's where we navigate the journey. A bit like, Christopher Columbus navigated to the New World. Captain Cook navigated to Australia. They course corrected along the way. There were storms on the way. There were rocks and ships went down. So nature still informs us, Gabrielle, and it's about what we do in our inner world, to me, is how we experience the outer world. Did I answer your question?
Yes. Well, what I definitely agree with you that we're part of the microcosm as much as we're part of the macrocosm.
Correct.
And the more we become aware, so I think that's where I was going before. It's like if we don't know, we don't know. Christopher Columbus had no idea that it's possible to fly to the moon.
That's right.
So metaphorically, we're just tiny little people learning and growing, just like we watch the kindies. What is appropriate behaviour there? Sorry,
Yeah.
the old teacher metaphor.
Yeah.
Little Freddie bangs little Mary over the head, and it's like, oh, children, you don't do that. That's not nice.
Yeah.
But when they're 7 or 8 and they say, hey, mate, what are you doing here? Well, she took this and he did that. And what happens already? By the time they're 7 or 8, everything that they are going to play out in life is already embedded and instilled, because until they're that age, they are one, as you're saying, one with everything. If I'd known this as a parent and as a teacher back then in the early 70s and then children in the 80s, I really, really wonder how differently I would have done things. Now, I could judge that. I could have regrets. I could have resentments, and but that's not the point. It was perfect for that point in time, as Christopher Columbus's was with that.
Correct.
The point is, if we sit still, they say a rolling stone gathers no moss, but if you sit there, you're going to grow a hell of a lot of moss and never grow, never change, never anything. And then wonder why your body is, oh, I'm stiff, I can't move, to a point. The body is going to mirror back where you are stuck, where you are churning, where you are not well, whatever it haven't. It's almost like It's like if I had my higher self and my team there, saying, "Oh, how do we get her to wake up? She's got to wake up. How do we get her? Let's poke her in the ribs and give her sore ribs. Let's bang her on the head with her. Let's flip her over so she falls over and she bumps her head and she's got to go and slow down and stop and think."
Yeah.
And it's like, how do they get through? The soul self has to play charades. And the more we raise, what I've learned recently on the spiritual side of it, is the more we can raise our vibration, which is less of the game, blame, shame thing, less of the ego thing, that we are lighter energetically. There is less that attaches and cuts us down or pulls us down, because we've been doing the cut, release stuff, right? And changing this and being 100% responsible for, if this is in my universe, then I, by the law of the universe, have attracted it in here. What is the benefit of this? And if I'm resisting it, what need is it meeting? How is this a secondary gain for me, And when I work with people, asking that, so, okay, so that's really good. You want to get, you don't want to do this. So how does it serve you? What's the real purpose of that? And if you're going to be totally honest, just drop into your heart for a moment and feel what it feels like if you stayed doing that. Come back and then feel what it feels like if you had the vulnerability, the courage, and you did this conscious and aware thing, what might happen. And you can see the possibilities, the hope of one step. Just take one. What did Brandon use? You take one step towards grace and she takes 1,000 towards you. And that's been the teachings of Buddhists and Hindus and everyone right across the board. It's up to us. And one of the things I used to put above my board back in the day when you had a blackboard and chalk and dermatitis was, every child is a genius waiting to be discovered. Welcome to the journey. And 3 or 4 years later, what am I in? The journey.
Yeah.
But the other thing is the 10 times 2 rule.
What's that?
If it is to be, it is up to me. That was one of my classroom rules. Not you're a naughty this and don't that and something else. And I think the other thing to help us through when we're in our, trauma or whatever, there's certainly the work on beliefs and the inner dialogue. When we're working with the inner child, let's say you've dropped something, what's the first thing you say in your mind? You stupid idiot, you shouldn't have done that, or, that kind of negative talk?
I don't, but some people do.
Yeah. Well, excuse me, I've got a master's in nasty self-talk. And this was one of my traumas. See, I was never good enough as a teacher. I was never this. You're always in trouble. It's always a teacher's fault.
Right.
Have gratitude and compassion for teachers, because they have 30 people, 30 plus parents, staff, admin. You are in the microcosm of beliefs, thought forms, expectations, beliefs, just the whole thing, and it's 150 years too late to try and, So I couldn't change the system. I just had to get out of it. And now I'm 20 so years later, actually looking to come back in and doing things in a very different way. And I'm excited about that. But the working with meeting your own personal needs, that inner child stuff, if you've got that inner voice, one of my things is working with the inner critic voice, which is a psychological assessment tool and an opt-in on my webpage, whatnot. But I found that I named it. One of my strategies was these voices, this energy, was to name it and to separate myself from it. So Patty Perfectionist, right, is the loudest voice in my head.
Right.
Look at that. You didn't quite get that right. You've got to polish that. You've got to dust your table. You've got to get it right. Whose belief is that? And this is where the belief and the thoughtful work comes in. You step back. Well, actually, one of the first things people can do is just say, for 15 minutes, watch your thoughts like clouds in the sky. Then go time yourself and write down as many thoughts as you can remember. You'll be gobsmacked what pops into your head and what you can capture. Then you can look at it as a separate thing, and you can say, oh, I always, two things come up. I always do this. I don't know why. I can't so-and-so. I can't this. I can't that. Hear the negative language.
Mm.
Then you can say, wow, whose voice is that? Now, in most people's cases, God love it, it's usually a mother or it's a teacher who has annihilated their self-esteem in the name of doing the best they could at the time. I now publicly apologise to all the 70,000 children I've taught over those years for the damage that I may have done unintentionally with the best of intentions, but coming from my reference point, my worldview, which is my filter of trauma or whatever it happens to be. So if I've got a Patty perfectionist expectation on myself, which
then
also
you would
came through
expect
religion,
that of your students.
yeah. So I had
Right.
the tidiest classroom. You got no idea. But I also had a lot of other good things too. So it wasn't always, in fact, it was, I look back on it now and I am humbled at the effort and the progress that I made by bringing in new things and being able to perceive things from this ancient kind of wisdom place, be it in the staff meeting or in the classroom, and bringing the magic into children's lives and celebrating, oh, you're so good at knowing all about bees. You're the expert on bees. You teach me, right? Not, today we're going to learn about bees,
Yeah.
I'm in control, you are automatically less. Now, we've grown up in that. We're still in that authoritarian, pyramid down business model, world model, and we're still in power over. I've got a bigger gun than you, watch what happens. Aha, but I'm going to get sneaky, I'm going to go and get my friend Julie, and we're both going to shoot guns at you. We're not talking about who's right or wrong, we're talking about the human element of competition, control, and pride. But we could go on.
We're going to have to wrap up, Gabrielle.
At the time, love, yes.
We'll have to wrap up. So in terms of
5 tips for people, if that's the case, if I could summarize some of this.
Please do.
So it's like listening to your body. Learn to listen to it, honor it. You can learn to muscle test easily. And fear, that fight, flight thing. What if fear was your best friend, like a puppy dog barking at the gate? What's that warning about? Do nothing. Observe. Come back and then tune into your inner child. Parent, learn how to parent yourself, but also to tune into that inner child. That is you, like we would see with our little grandkids or our beautiful little ones. That's what we love about children. That if that was us, how would we be speaking? Oh, sweetheart, you broke the plate. Never mind. We can clean that up. That's not what a lot of the time. Damn, I've broken the plate. Anyway, upgrade your beliefs. Check out whose beliefs are they. Do they serve me? How do I want to get rid of those? How would I feel if I didn't have that belief anymore? So we're working on, with Theta Healing, we're working on 4 levels of the subconscious where beliefs are stored and they go back generational. So you may be hanging on to grandma's beliefs and wondering why your life is limited in 2024. And spiritual hygiene, which is keeping yourself clear and cut from other people's energies. The more work you do, the more sensitive it is. You're going to have dark nights of the soul time and time again. You can have depression time and time again. When you become aware of, here's my annual dip according to my astrology, you're aware. It's no different. It becomes to me nowadays like, looks like there's going to be some wet weather. I'll go get my clothes off the line. I've got about half an hour by the look of those storm clouds. I live my life kind of like that. And then, if the washing got wet, it's not the end of the world, and having no fear around that. But grounding these days, really grounding and connecting energetically with the earth and strengthening your own pillar with the divine, because you're that. You're not all this other stuff.
Yeah, I think that grounding.
That's what our generations are really having to unpack. We spent our whole lives building up into this marvelous onion, but now we're just taking the layers away and the young ones can come in and just go straight from A to K. They don't have to go A, B, C, D like we have, you know?
Yeah. Well, that's progression, isn't it?
It is.
Well, Gabrielle, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom today. So we will put a link where they can find more about you and your books. And we look forward to hearing feedback on what we've talked about today.
Thank
So,
you. It's been,
thank you.
I love having inspirational conversations, and you do such a lovely job with that, Julie. You really do.
Thank you.
You and Tash, what a duo, huh?
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for tuning into this insightful episode of Let's Chat with Julie Lewin and our special guest, Gabrielle Bailey. We explored so many different things, from trauma, from teaching, from the universe and the microcosm and the macrocosm, and telepathy, all sorts of subjects. I hope that you enjoyed it. And I hope that you were able to take something from our podcast that will be of benefit in your day-to-day life. If you enjoyed the episode, please like and subscribe our podcast wherever you listen, so it can get into the hands of those who need it most. Also, your insights shape the direction of our podcast. If there's a topic that you want us to talk about or an expert that you want us to interview, please let us know. Thank you for listening. And remember, the journey to self-discovery and growth is an ongoing process and doesn't stop beyond, and it continues beyond the airwaves. Until next time, may you find courage, peace, and your own magic path. Thank you for listening, and remember, the journey to self-discovery and growth is an ongoing process, and it continues beyond the airwaves. Until next time, may you find courage, peace, and magic on your unique path. Thank you.